All kids out of the pool for Adult Swim. All kids out.
Hoy hoy, let's talk about theater of the mind today. Ever since I started role-playing back in 2006, 2007, it was either late 2006 or early 2007, it's been a while. It's rained a lot from there to here. I don't fucking remember anymore. But it's been a while, that's the point. And ever since I started gaming back then, I always remember that my go-to, whenever I'm a game master, I was gonna say player, when I'm a game master, my go-to way of running combat is theater of the mind. Now, theater of the mind is when you don't have miniatures, don't have a battle map, and you just describe what's happening. You play it all up here. And I know that not everybody can, but it's my preferred method, and it's the method I try to walk my players into. Back in college, what we used to play was 3.5, Dungeons & Dragons 3.5 edition. It was actually right off the press when we started playing back then. And yeah, you can do a tactical thing, you have your miniatures, you have movement, so you have a grid. And we would sometimes draw grids on the fucking tables of the eatery at college. It was fucking crazy. But that never jived with me. As a game master, I tried it a couple of times, and it can be fun, but to me, it takes away the theatrics of it. It feels too rigid. And there are only a few specific things I like rigid. You know, other things I like them to be more fluid, if you catch my drift. Now, as a player, I also played tactical games, and I also played with tactical gaming in the tabletop role-playing table game things. You get me. I played D&D with miniatures and movement and counting your speed and all that hoo-ha. Back in 4th edition, it was way more important because a lot of things counted and used movement. In 3.5, it was a lot easier to have theater of the mind. Nowadays, all I run is a system that I designed myself, and it's completely and utterly narrative. And that's the way, I like it and prefer it. And I do enjoy that the world's most popular or best-selling tabletop role-playing game, 5th edition, also adds a lot that you can do with Theater of the Mind. It's less rigid, I feel, than 3rd edition, 3.5, and obviously 4th edition. So that's something I appreciate of them. But when you're gonna run Theater of the Mind, because if you have not Theater of the Mind, you have tactical gameplay, you have the shit there. You have the miniatures, and you have the checkered tablecloth thingy, and you can put shit in the way or draw shit in the way if you do it with a white board. That's something we also used to do back in the day. Really cool. And I do recommend them if you're gonna be they actually have grids that you can draw on them that are made for Dungeons and Dragons. You can just erase them with a regular whiteboard eraser. Again, they're great. Bit expensive, you get the big one, but I think it's worth it if you're gonna be using miniatures. But when you have miniatures, you can draw on those things, you can put shit on the way, you can, like this can of Coke, yeah, that's a tower, you know, whatever, it's a troll, whatever you want to do. It's right there. It's very visual, and I know a lot of people like visual things to be put in front of them. I prefer descriptors. I prefer to give me a description of what's happening, where's the area around me. So if you're gonna do Theater of the Mind, obviously the most important thing is to describe. The other reason why I prefer Theater of the Mind is, like in a system that I'm running, name drop, Paradigm Odyssey, you can do a lot in combat. Combat is very narrative as well. So if a player is fighting on a ship, they're on a pirate ship, and he wants to wrap his arm on a rope, and the rope is tied to the mast, and he wants to swing across the ship, fighting people as he does so, without provoking attacks of opportunity or any of that bullshit, because it looks cool, and I think the rule of cool goes far above and beyond, and it's more important than the rule of rule. So I let them do it. In my system, you can just do something like that, because that's just how you're describing combat. It's less rigid when you're using theater of the mind, because when you have the grid, my character's here, the enemy's here, and we're fighting, and then next turn I roll to hit again, and then the next turn I roll to hit again, and then I was moved back, and then the enemy moves ahead, and then we hit again, and that's the entire combat. So usually when you have tactical combat, I feel, and at least from my personal experience, your mileage may vary, combat can be a lot faster, so you can have a lot of combats during a single session because of that, because you're just rolling, people are there, they're not really moving, and that's all she wrote. You can put shit on the way, make things move, but ultimately they're just there. When you're using theater of the mind, it's more fluid. You have a lot of more wiggle room, so you can do things like, yeah, I run up to the enemy, I strike him, and I climb on the wall, and I'm standing in the... not standing, I'm hanging from the ceiling, while I'm flipping off the enemy from below, and that's where their turn ends. And that's fine. And then the enemy tries to jump up to hit them like a fucking piñata. And then the player rolls to defend, and they get a critical miss, and then they fall on their ass and break a rib. You know, shit like that, you usually can get it in games like Dungeons and Dragons. And again, this is not a knock to play to games like that. Everybody is allowed to like what they like, but I'm talking more about theater of the mind. It's a lot harder to do shit like that in a more rigid system. And you can totally do it though, because before I had the system that I'm playing now, running now, what I used to run was, the games that I ran the most were 3.5 D&D, Pathfinder 1st edition, which I fucking love, and 5th edition D&D. And I still did a lot of theater of the mind for those games. I remember I had a game where we had 3 players, and they were fighting a giant skeleton. It was just a gigantic skeleton. It was running around the countryside, just doing its own business, being a gigantic skeletal kaiju, as one does. And I had a sorcerer, I believe a rogue, and I believe it was a summoner. So it was Pathfinder. Yeah, sorcerer, a rogue, and a sorcerer. A sorcerer, a rogue, and a summoner. Jesus, what the fuck are words? A summoner, a sorcerer, and a rogue. And the rogue was just climbing on top of the fucking skeleton, while the summoner was flying, summoning shit on it, and the sorcerer was also flying on the other side, blasting it with spells. Replicating shit like that in a tactical game is a lot harder. And what I did was I obviated attacks of opportunity for movement. I just obviated them completely. You can have attacks of opportunity, but only in very specific moments. So they could do all of those things. That they are very creative, and they had a fucking blast doing all of that shit. And that's what I prefer. So usually my combats take a lot longer. Like 5 turns in combat could take us 30 to 45 minutes, as everybody is describing their actions. But, and you might think, 5 turns for 45 minutes? What the fuck are they doing? We're describing. I'm running towards the enemy, sliding between his legs, kipping up and elbowing him on the back of the head. And I'm describing how the enemy reacts to that, because combat, even though to me combat comes secondary to everything else, to me combat should be a spectacle. Combat should be moving the plot forward. Combat in my games, they are pivotal moments in the story. You don't fight random dudes in my games. Again, that's how I do it. I know a lot of people enjoy your random tables, and I have used them, and random tables can be really fucking fun. We can talk about that some other time, because you can have a fucking underwater tiger going in a fucking pirate ship, which, you know, like if you're using random tables and you're not looking at the place in the random table, you can get really interesting rolls. And you just roll with it, because, like, you know, then you get, like, again, water tigers in pirate ships attacking a fucking pirate ship, which can be really fun. Where the fuck was I before that fucking segue? Give me a second. I forgot. So we're going back to that later. So yeah, theater of the mind, you need the scriptures, right? Set up the scene. Where are the players? Who are the enemies? How do the enemies look? Do they look angry? Do they look scared? It's very important to have enemies scared of your players once in a while, because they will enjoy it a lot. We had one of those a couple of sessions back, and they were having so much fun. I even played a Wilhelm screen on my computer, because I also do score all my games, as they were fighting, and the players had a blast when they heard the Wilhelm screen as one of the bandits fell off the fucking minecart as they were on top of a crevice. Really fun stuff. R.I.P. Sly. He's still alive. So it's very important for you to describe it. Describe the scene, describe the place, describe the enemies. Then you let the players describe themselves. Because that's something I realize a lot of players don't do. They don't describe how their characters are feeling. And describing feelings can be tricky, but they can add a lot to a scene. Because, again, when you're doing narrative combat, when you're doing theater of the mind, you have to think about it like a book. If you're reading a book, you don't want to read, "He swung his sword and struck him. Then the enemy swung his sword and struck him. Then the hero swung his sword once more and struck him again. And then the enemy fell down. And then the hero had advantage on the attack." You don't want shit like that when you're reading a book. And when I run my games, I try to act like if we're living a book. That's the idea. You know, and I've had players come up with really fucking inventive shit. Now, in my game, the one I run, Paradigm Odyssey, sorry. When I run Paradigm Odyssey, I give bonus die when players come up with really good descriptions. It's part of the game mechanics. I took that from Exalted, Stunt Die, I call it Flair. So I think it sounds better. Plus, I'm pretty sure I don't... Stunt Die might be copyrighted. I don't want to piss off White Wolf. So it's very important that, you know, you give proper descriptions when you're doing theater of the mind. And again, this mostly goes to game masters when you're doing theater of the mind combat, narrative combat, but it also goes to the players. Surprise your game master. If you're doing theater of the mind, describe your action in great detail and tell him if you can. You'd be surprised if the game master says no, because if you give a good description, the game master might be like, fuck yeah, just roll the fucking die. And you might get away with a lot of shit just with one attack roll. Hey, wouldn't that be awesome? So, you know, when doing theater of the mind combat, it can be tricky, but I feel, again, for me, Angel, the man himself, for me, it's very fulfilling. And from what I've seen from my players, it's been very fucking fulfilling to them as well. And they have so much fun. And it was really awesome because, like, last campaign, they were new. They were new at tabletop role-playing games in general. So when I told them to describe their shit, they were a bit confused at first because, you know, they had run maybe 1 or 2 sessions of D&D. Saw a little bit of D&D online. But never really, like, sat down and bid on a campaign proper. Much less something that's so narrative heavy. So when they came to this, they stumbled a little bit at first and it was fun to watch. But now, in campaign number 2, the shit they come up with, woo! Okay, I'm gonna describe one of my favorite ones. They were fighting, and it's the the minecart one. They were fighting bandits on a minecart, right? And they were on a minecart behind the bandits. And there are 4 players. And they're getting close. One of the players described, I want to use my whip to lasso their minecart and just start pulling it towards us. Now, this player character, she's a 7-foot tall woman. A cowgirl. She is massive, scary, sexy. So what did the bandits do? They screamed their heads off because they see this tall, big-ass woman pulling on their minecart with just a fucking whip. And then one of the players is a masked assassin. What does the masked assassin tell me? Okay, as she's holding on to the whip, I'm gonna tightrope walk on it towards their minecart. I'm getting fucking goosebumps just thinking about that fucking scene. He's just tightrope walking on it, menacingly with 2 fucking guns akimbo. And I told him, alright, you know what? I like that so much, I gave him 3 die for that description, and I told him, whatever you do, they're screaming their asses off because there's this giant woman pulling on their minecart, and this fucking assassin with 2 guns is just menacingly walking on the tightrope without any fucking issue towards them. So they were scared shitless. It was fucking great. Meanwhile, one of the other player characters, who is Alchemist Pixie, but you know, it's a 4-foot tall pixie, it's a big pixie. She's an alchemist, so she was throwing bombs at them, making stalagmites and stalactites fall all around the area. Fucking poetry. Now, you can't do that in a more tactical game, and again, it's not a knock to tactical games, it's just what I prefer. If you like your grid, and if you like your combat in the grid and movement, tactical movement, hey, you win. More power to you. It's just, for my sensitivities, that's what I prefer. Theater of the mind. I hope this helps you paint a different picture of what Theater of the Mind is. If you haven't never tried Theater of the Mind, I hope this video can maybe help you take that one step forward towards Theater of the Mind. You might surprise yourself. You might surprise your players once you try it and you eat it up and enjoy it. If there's any other topics you like good old Angel to speak his head off for about 15 minutes at a time, let me know in the comment section or anywhere you see Angel online. I'll be happy to oblige and maybe add my little zest and experience on it. I might just be a game master for 18 years, but I have over 30 games under my belt and I've written a fuckload. Perhaps sometimes we can get into game design as well, because I know, like me, a lot of people dream about publishing their own game, and I have done a little bit of that. So, we can help each other out if you want. So let me know in the comment section below what other topics you'd like for me to tackle. Until next time, remember, rule number 1, always have fun.